Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Now back home on Dalal Street, the Nifty ended a tad bit below the 11,700 mark and saw cuts of around 0.5% odd. The Sensex was down more than 150 points, while the Nifty Bank managed to hold on to the 28,200 odd mark. The mid-caps, well, they outperformed yesterday with the index rallying close to around 0.5%, though that index as well did come off the high point of the day. Well, Rima will be joining us for some cues on the markets. But before we go across to Rima, here is some market opinion coming in from Samir Arora of Helios Capital.
If you compare to Nifty, everybody is still underperforming, even us, in rupee or dollar, but if you convert it, because it's too concentrated. But the good thing about being a hedge fund is that people look at absolute performance. I mean, we can say at sometimes that please look at absolute performance, although over time we of course have to beat and have handsomely beaten the index. So it helps to have a broader rally, but mostly it helps if you have the stocks that are going up, even if it is very narrow. Growth is higher in many of my financials and in some of my consumer. So we are happy with that part. It's just that the drag of having lost 9.5% on just conversion, that is the irritating part. Otherwise, in rupee terms, we were okay. My biggest risk, if you say slightly big picture, is that even if BJP or Mr. Modi may win the main elections, you cannot say the same about the state elections. There's one event which we have to cross, but you know, for us, always we have 25-30% short even now. But we have, as I said, changed a little bit of the mix on the long side, and a little bit we have changed the shorts. So this risk will never go away, but generally so far, yeah, the momentum is good and it's broadening for sure. We've added a corporate bank and we've added the state-owned bank, and both we added about 2 months ago, 1.5 months ago. So it's okay for the moment, but I still think that my number one bank is the number one best idea of this country, which is HDFC Bank. You know, now Mr. Puri has been challenged. So I think he has another goal in life. I hope I'm motivating him that now he has to show that how dare you think that my bank will be affected if somebody leaves. He is back on the front foot.
Okay, that's a candid chat from Samir as always. But to see how the trade setup looks like this morning, Rima is joining us now. Rima, good morning. A lot of moving parts for the markets. Of course, it's expiry, but significant moves seen in crude and rupee overnight.
Yes, absolutely. You've got macros to track. You've got even the fact that it's the futures and options expiry. Just a quick recap of what happened overnight. The Nifty was largely consolidating yesterday, and that's after 2 days of big up move. The broader markets fared relatively better, so the mid-cap index was higher by more than about 0.5%. As you rightly pointed out, the focus will be on the futures and options expiry. So far in the August series, the Nifty has seen a rally of 4.7%, while the mid-caps have gained close to about 6.5%. And the big movers were Reliance Industries, your corporate bank, a couple of IT and pharmaceutical names on the back of the rupee depreciation. So Axis Bank as well as ICICI Bank roughly gained about 20% in August series, while Reliance Industries had a massive 16.5% rally to cross that 8 lakh crore by way of market capitalization, and add in a couple of IT names like Tech Mahindra as well. If you look at the futures and options picture so far, the market-wide rollovers stand at 69%, which is better than the average of the last 3 months. And the same can be said about the Nifty rollovers as well at 53%. Keep a eye on crude oil prices now crossing that $77 per barrel mark on Brent crude prices, and that could generally dent the upside over the medium term. Overnight as well, we've seen crude oil prices gain by more than about 1% on the back of higher inventory as well as weaker supplies coming in from Iran. Rupee as well needs a lot of monitoring. It closed at fresh record lows yesterday. The closing level was about 70.5, but it went on to hit an intraday low of 70.65. So focus now will be on the GDP data as well as fiscal data, which will be out on Friday. That said, the rupee weakness could boost the prospects of IT companies, and IT generally has been doing quite well. In fact, there was a global tech rally as well. You guys spoke about Alphabet, Amazon. So the tech rally pushed the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 to record levels, and separately, in important development, the Canadian Foreign Minister has now joined the NAFTA talks with US as well as Mexico, with the Prime Minister, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, saying that there is a possibility that the deal could be reached by Friday. The FIs were, big sellers, so they sold about 1,400 crore in the cash market, but the DIs pretty much matched it by buying 1,114 crore in the cash market.
All right, Rima, so that's the entire trade setup. But stock-specific action, what do we look out for today?
Reliance Infrastructure as well as Adani Transmission. The street knew this was going to come, but post-market, as we had the press conference where Reliance Infrastructure has announced that they have concluded 100% sale of the Mumbai power business to Adani Transmission. With this, the gross debt will come down to 7,500 crore, and Anil Ambani also indicating that the company will be a zero-debt company by next year. From the RBI annual report, we also learned that they plan to extend the Feb 12 circular to NBFCs. ICICI Lombard, yesterday Yash was talking about the new motor insurance norms and how it will be a positive. CLSA says that this expands the market for the insurance companies and can improve the profitability. So ICICI Bank is the top pick over there. Greaves Cotton will be acquiring a majority stake in the electric vehicle company called Ampere Vehicles. National Fertilizer, a JV promoted by the company along with EIL, will revive an old FCIL plant in Telangana, and NALCO has paid a record dividend of 1,102 crore in FY18. Back to you.
Okay, Rima, thank you so much for that. You talked about the monitoring that rupee needs, so let's talk a bit more about rupee. So the rupee hit a new all-time low of 70.64 in yesterday's session intraday. Fresh dollar demand from importers, mainly the oil refiners, following high crude prices, hurt the Indian currency. We spoke to senior economists from Kotak Mahindra Bank and SBI on what they make of this rupee depreciation. Listen to what they had to say.
Slow and steady depreciation in the currency, that really doesn't necessitate a worrisome thing right now. But having said that, we'll have to be very cautious because, India being a net importing country, oil prices are also not providing too much of comfort at this point in time. And that, coupled with the fact that we have non-oil, non-gold imports structurally showing a significant, upward pressure, all in all, the current account deficit seems to be really coming under a lot of pressure. So clearly, we do have a significant risk of a sharp move, and that could become a little bit of a problem.
The RBI clearly says that the continued intervention in the foreign exchange market is not going to be efficient on the part of any central bank. So as of now, I am not bemused by the continued weakness in the currency, because I think there is a limit to what the RBI can intervene in the forex market.
Well, time to slip into a short break. Up next, an exclusive conversation with Jayant Sinha on what's ahead for the aviation sector. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Well, on to a CNBC TV 18 exclusive then. Minister of State for Aviation Jayant Sinha says the aviation sector is in the midst of a cyclical downturn. Now, in an exclusive conversation with Shireen Bhan, he also talks about the government's plan for reviving the sector. Here's an excerpt of that very interesting conversation.
As you know well, and I think everybody who's been following the airline industry for some time knows, the industry is very cyclical, and it's driven by 2 or 3 factors. One, of course, is yields, that is, what the pricing is. The other is oil prices, interest rates, and then, of course, the currency. So right now we have a situation where interest rates, the currency and oil prices are heading in the negative direction for the airline industry, and as a result of that, we are going through a classic cyclical downturn for the airline industry. Now, as far as the government is concerned, as far as our role as policymakers are concerned, we are working hard to be able to provide a supportive policy environment for the industry so that people can get through this downturn well and in a healthy fashion. Of course, we have a situation in the industry where we have, particularly as far as domestic travel is concerned, a wide separation in terms of the full service carriers and the low-cost carriers. The low-cost carriers obviously have a much superior cost position relative to the full service carriers. The full service carriers try to make it up with better service, with the frequent flyer programs, with the international travel. So it is, of course, a very intense competitive battle, and in that competitive battle, of course, the full service carriers have not been able to maintain their profitability as they had in the past. So we have to see how all of this plays out. Again, as I said, industry conditions, of course, are going through a cyclical downturn, and at the same time, we have this competitive battle going on between the full service carriers and the low-cost carriers as well.
You know, you're absolutely right, because yields also continue to be on a downward trajectory, and we are now seeing interest costs, the currency depreciate, and oil prices surge. Given that, what is the government's plan of action? Is there anything that you can do beyond trying to engage with the GST Council on ATF, which has been a long-standing demand, but we haven't seen any forward movement? So what can the government do to provide any kind of relief to the sector?
As you know, Shireen, the Petroleum Ministry and the Ministry of Civil Aviation has recommended multiple times to the GST Council, which includes not just the central government but all the state governments, and where all decisions are done on a consensus basis, that aviation turbine fuel should be included in GST and that full input credit should be given for goods and services. So we have petitioned to the GST Council multiple times. We are hopeful that at some point they will recognize that we should, of course, do that for the industry, and that will obviously benefit the industry as well. Growth is very strong. The demand for air travel among our traveling public is very high, and of course, you know, a lot of capacity is coming into the system because of the large order books that our airlines have right now. So with capacity coming in, demand continuing to be very strong, we are seeing that fares and yields as a result of that have not gone up either. So it's a very intensely competitive environment. It is very, very competitive for everyone right now, but it is really up to each of the individual players to be able to figure out through this very difficult competitive environment what their strategy should be.
Since you're talking about individual players traversing these difficult times, let me ask you specifically about Jet Airways. Have you had any conversation with the management of Jet Airways on the current situation? We understand that there are multiple probes on, that is what reports suggest, whether it's the Income Tax Department or it's even the Ministry of Corporate Affairs looking into the company's affairs. What is the update that you can give us with respect to the government taking cognizance of the affairs at Jet Airways?
Those matters are handled by different departments of the government, different ministries of the government, so I can't speak to that. I personally have not had any conversations with Jet Airways. They have met with officials in the ministry, and again, as I said, the goal of the ministry is to be able to create a supportive policy environment for all the industry players.
Okay, all right, time to slip into a short break. Up next, CNBC TV 18 has accessed the Parliamentary Finance Panel draft report on NPAs. We'll get you details when you come back.